I wish we recorded the last 24 minutes of our conversation because we talked about tech. We talked about personal tech usage and how we ramp up our home networks and configurations. And I do think the most useful piece of tech recommendation I could make is probably my most delightful tech upgrade over the last few months has been a bigger desk. So I used to have a 4-foot by 2-foot desk, and now I have a 5-foot by 3-foot desk. So it's much deeper. I bought a Home Depot butcher block countertop actually, and that is now my desk. And so it's a beautiful piece of wood, and it's deeper. You're further away from me than you would have been. You're a whole foot further away. And it's been my favorite upgrade. I can rest my arms on the desk a lot easier. This is fantastic. That's my new show, Mike's Tech Recommendations.
And do you ever get at the cleaver and process some meat there? Yeah, just to mix it up.
I could. I could be cutting steak like Salt Bay right on camera, right on the desk. It can handle it.
There's probably some overlap between the Amazon ads community and the meat community. I mean, I know Abe, he's big on the smoking and barbecue, so he would enjoy that.
I've lived in Texas for 7 years. I do not own a barbecue.
You don't need to. You can just go down the street. You can just go down the street and...
Yes, that's right.
Didn't buy one yourself.
They have barbecue in France?
Yes, and they call it barbecue as well, but it's not the same thing you're thinking of.
You can get some brisket?
No, not like that. No, it's not like that.
You know what's absurd? I was just at Unboxed here, Amazon's event in Austin. They selected Austin. I think it was in New York last year. And what do? No brisket, no barbecue at the event, which I feel like is a real big missed opportunity.
Yeah, that seems like a huge miss. Amazon's famous, of course, for being frugal. So maybe they got some quotes from some barbecue places and they said, no, we can't swing that. Even though they went to Austin, which has that, that kind of, let's call it personality, but I think better than I, but everyone and their brother is in Austin these days. So maybe that's part of the reason they did it, just easier commute.
Although I saw in 2024, more people in the U.S. migrated to Colorado than Texas.
I think that's where I'd end up.
Colorado? Exceptional cycling for you.
Yeah, for the mountains. Yeah, I mean, I've been there. I have family out there. I've been there many times, so.
It's amazing. It's amazing. You know what else is amazing, Brent? New Year's resolutions. I don't know how much credence you put to New Year's resolutions, but it's always nice to set an intention to do things better, differently, to reach a little further, regardless of what day it is. And sort of that turning of the calendar is always a good opportunity for people to do it. It just turns out with the way that scheduling has happened for us, I feel like every year we do some kind of look ahead for the new year in Amazon advertising. So I'm excited to have this conversation with you today. You gave a presentation in Core earlier this week where you blew the roof off about AMC, Amazon Marketing Cloud, which we'll talk about a little bit today. So you're fired up on a couple of these topics.
Yeah, there's 2 or 3 of these things that I see myself getting very heavily involved in 2025, almost to the exclusion of other things, just trying to double down and focus on them. And that is one of them, sure. And there's a couple others that I put in here as we were kind of brainstorming this concept. And I also agree with what you're saying with the turning of the year. With the turning of the leaves is happening right now, but we've got the turning of the year coming soon. And that's always a good time for reflection, at least for me. I enjoy that. And I don't take the New Year's resolutions things too seriously. I think the best time to start if you want to make a change is, right now. But it is nice to have a clean break on the calendar in some ways. Because then later in your life, you can kind of look back and say, yeah, 2015, that was the year that I really did X and Y, and I focused on those things, and I, followed through with it. So it's nice to have that retrospective ability.
Heck yeah. Well, without further ado, let's jump into it. Our first topic for things we want to be more resolute about, is that why they call them resolutions? Is enhanced measurement and analytics. And this is a big umbrella that I think every digital marketer, regardless of what you work on, should be thinking about, which is to measure more, to analyze more efficiently and more effectively. So for Amazon marketing, what comes up for you when we say the phrase enhancing the way that we measure and do our analytics?
Yeah, so for me, kind of predictable, but the number one thing that I'm focused on is definitely AMC. To give a bit of background, we've been messing around with AMC since July of 2022 at Pathfinder. We got started on it like really early. at that time, it was like super manual, like needed to write all the SQL queries yourself. And there was no kind of like templated interface or suggested queries or any kind of software that was doing it. So we've kind of seen the evolution of it to where it is now, where we have all those things, and it's really cool. And for us, AMC at first was like the connective tissue. It was like, how do we figure out what's going on with Amazon DSP, like for real, instead of just trying to use all the metrics in Amazon DSP and trying to use all the metrics in the sponsored ads with no bridge between the two of them. But that's what AMC was at first. It was this bridge to go between them. And obviously, Amazon's made a huge push on it since Unboxed, which was, quite recently, like you just mentioned in Austin. They announced, like so many things about AMC and DSP. It's almost like a waterfall of things to try to process. But with that, it's gotten like a much more mainstream attention, and everyone's kind of sat up and paid attention to it now. So when I think about next year, like committing to that, like really becoming an expert on that is one thing that I'm very interested in.
Yeah. And what I like so much about your presentation that you did in Core earlier in the week was the title of it was like, why you should give a damn about Amazon Marketing Cloud. And like, could you quickly give like a 1 minute synopsis of why one should give a damn about Amazon Marketing Cloud?
Sure. So first of all, I want everyone to kind of reset their cynicism, because when people see new things from Amazon, sometimes they go, oh, that's just a way to make us spend more money. And I would say yes.
Well, that's what I do.
Yeah, well, you're right. So I'm speaking to you in this case, but I would say yes. And you also can learn a bunch from this. So AMC, like I mentioned, it's that connective tissue, but I would also frame it as the way that Amazon actually says it is like insights and audiences. Those are the two components. So insights is here's all the ad information data that is across multiple touch points, multiple platforms, everything that Amazon owns, and you can see it in one place and query it and tie together, these answers for complex business questions. And the other thing is you can then make audiences based on those queries. So a really straightforward example is like someone that saw your ad and search for keywords that are relative to what you're selling, but they didn't click on any of your products or they didn't click on your ad. Before, those people were just, lost to the ether. But now you can structure a query in AMC and you can put them into an audience. And soon you'll be able to actually, bid more aggressively against them in sponsored ads with like a modifier, much in the same way you've done with placement modification, which I know has come up on this show many times. So that's just a very straightforward, concrete example. That's why you should give a crap, because you now have a very clear path to actionability, if that's a word. Because before it was like, yeah, you can run AMC and you can see all this stuff. Look how long it took someone to purchase. Look how many ad touch points they had. And the question, which is correct to ask, is, well, what's the actionable thing I take from this? Like, what am I actually supposed to do about this? And now we have some very clear instructions on what to do. Make an audience and change your bids. For the other things I mentioned, tweak how you're targeting throughout the funnel.
Yeah, I know that for me personally and the company here, it's definitely something that's on our mind. In the last few weeks, we had access and we've been poking around it, and it's been really cool to see. And really, it's just like the main, regardless of where it is or where it lives, like more data is always going to be better. And really the game, like the challenge is really just like, how do you incorporate it into what it is that you do? One answer that you've already mentioned is, well, you can create audiences to put into your normal sponsored products, which is probably the coolest part of this whole equation, where you have sponsored products, which typically performs so well. It's everyone's favorite ad type. And now you're going to be able to layer in other cool components to it, which is like, well, show me people who have, clicked on this, but not converted for my sponsored products. I think that's the most exciting promise for me with Amazon Marketing Cloud. So I love that component and all the extra charts and graphs that you're going to be able to get to just better understand your Amazon marketing. So that's sort of the first point that we have in, enhancing the way that we do measurement and analytics. I know that I have an intention to really poke around more in AMC. I'll probably be doing some, more episodes on it in the future, of course. Is there any other kind of reporting or improvement to the way that you run your analytics that you want to improve in 2025?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I would say making even smarter use of the things that Amazon has furnished for us in brand analytics. So Search Query Performance Report is like the one that I feel everyone was so excited about for 3 months in the middle of this year. And, well, we use that at Pathfinder, but I feel like there's always ways we could improve what we're doing with that data, because it's not really something you can pull out of an API. You have to like go scrape it manually and like download it and process it. So there's probably more space for doing that. I would imagine that's another one that I think is important.
Yeah, we were talking building your own internal database of this kind of stuff where you download it and combine it with another one. So in a single spreadsheet, you have multiple weeks or multiple months, probably the best combination of effort and size of file is to sort of download those files and combine them so that you can run reports and understand what a keyword has done from month 1 to month 2 for any particular product, to understand the market. I just had a customer I was talking to, and they were wondering, was it something they did or was it something the market did? And I sort of sat for a while. I was like, what's the easiest way to answer this question for these people? And it was just like, let's run some search query performance reports for this month and last month. Let's compare these two. And you will see that the amount of search impressions go down, or the amount of times, something was searched go down. And if it did not, if the amount of searches went up, did you lose market share as that happened, right? So answering that question, I feel like that's the easiest place to look. And I feel like that's such a common question for people to have, which is my results are down. Did I lose market share or not? I feel like search query performance this is just last week. That was my first place. I was like, out of all the things that I can show you, out of all the things that we can investigate, I think all we need to do is go find out, your top 1,000 search terms where they searched less this time period versus the previous time period. And it added a lot of clarity to how they were understanding their data. So yeah, absolutely right. Ways to do that more regularly and study that and build your own little share of voice understanding, I think is really valuable for people.
Yeah, even if it's a simple implementation, and you can, kind of manage the data yourself. There's tools you can use to do this, of course, but the longer I spend in the agency space, the more I think it's worth investing in the time and energy to roll our own, even if at first the implementation looks pretty, basic compared to off-the-shelf tools. And don't get me wrong, we still use a lot of off-the-shelf tools, but having your own is really nice. Seems to be the theme of this podcast.
In terms of other data analysis, I will say that, I've always known this to be important, but I don't often think about it on the day-to-day. So here's my thing: profit and loss statements on a regular basis. And one of my favorite episodes that I did in 2024 was the interstellar PPC manager, where you imagine you went to Mars and you had a huge delay in communication time. I did the episode with you. Imagine you had a huge delay in the internet, and your internet was incredibly slow, so you couldn't get this data from Amazon, and you had to rely on just a single spreadsheet every day or every week get updated, that master big level overview of everything that you could ever need to know. I have that in a spreadsheet, and it gets filled out manually and it gets pulled in all these places. So one intention that I have is to make that a lot easier, faster, to just have the one sheet that you would need. And it's different than just a normal P&L, but it's just one sheet with all the columns you could ever want to give you the pulse on your business. I don't know what I should call it. Currently, I'm calling it the Interstellar PPC Manager, which just lists everything for you. So in one place, the composition of your search terms, the composition of your keywords for broad phrase exact, the composition of your ad spend for different campaign types, the composition of how your ACoS power ratio changes, the composition of, your organic sales percentage over time. One sheet that just lists everything week by week for you is an intention that I a percentage of wasted spend week by week, just all these things week by week, so that you are always able to identify where to go focus. Oh, this week my performance, I don't like it. Oh, look, my percentage of non-converting spend went up. Let me go fix that. That is an intention of mine to sort of build in a faster way in 2025.
I think our most advanced clients and sellers that I know in the space as well, they have something very similar to that built out that shows different aspects of the business, including what did it cost for us to send in a shipment to Amazon 6 months ago versus what it is now? How do the fees impact that? What's our time for stuff on the water, if it's being shipped over? Everything. PPC is a part of that, but also there's a whole element to it that's financial, right? Because obviously the finances of a e-com business are incredibly important. It's very cash heavy. You have a lot of inventory. Cycles and turn matter a lot. So All those things need to be tracked and looked at. And most of those solutions are usually homemade. They're not like something they use a seller board, for example, but then they have their own custom baked version of that. And I think that can be also looked at from an ad department. Someone who's a head of an ad department in an agency, you should have like a master dashboard where you can see all the accounts and their trends, and then you can talk to each individual manager about their progress on those and how they're going. So that's one thing we're also tracking, let's call it.
I think it's difficult for a lot of practitioners like myself. Like, I love getting my hands dirty. I love going in the data. I love like building reports, and it's different to sort of sit back in your chair and like have the report done for you and like make bigger decisions than like just looking at like search term or like match type composition, like performance by match type. Like, what's my ACoS, spend, click, so on and so forth for broad phrase exact, and then compare that and like you get insights like, oh, let me go fix my match type composition. It's different to sort of sit back at a high level and be like, okay, like how does that fit into the broader spectrum? And like, how do I make business level decisions on that? Which was the whole thought exercise behind like, you're the business owner on Mars and you can't do the work yourself because you don't have fast enough internet. And all you get is this spreadsheet. And you have to make your decisions from that. I thought it was such a useful exercise that I hope to do more of to, push myself up the decision-making tree. Section 2 relates to AI. It's the hottest topic. I interviewed someone today actually, and I was like, tell me what you're doing with AI. Because like, I just wanted to know, like, are they paying attention to stuff? Are they trying to push things forward? Or are they like trying to find more efficient and effective ways to get stuff done? So this is like a vital skill that I know that I look for as someone who hires people, and as well as myself. And, from the Amazon marketing perspective, like, what comes up for you, AI as an Amazon marketer?
So yeah, let's look back at like what happened in 2024. We have these first initial tries by Amazon where they were integrating AI into the sponsored brands and sponsored display creative area, right? So you'd say, hey, here's my primary product photo. Can you like put it in a kitchen? Or can you put it like on a desk or something like that? And those were fun. Some people made fun of them, whatever, but it's Amazon, right? They always do like the 0.1 version release and then they iterate on it. And by version 5, it's like amazing. So I feel like what happened more recently is they talked about this generative AI studio, right? Which is like, hey, this is your central hub for all this stuff. And you create things here and then you can push it out to DSP. You can push it out to sponsored ads and sponsored, brands type creative. So that is their vision for it, I think. And one of the problems that we always have as an agency is requesting from clients more creative and having that faster to the point where we just have people internally that will make stuff now. But for them to be like 10x in their job, yeah, maybe they just need to learn how to use this generative AI kind of studio tool in the next year and really like push into that. And yeah, then you have less need for a graphics team. You can have one person that is super good at using AI, understands how to communicate with the client and get information from them and pull that in. And then you have this kind of like central hub where everything can go. That's I think the kind of vision for it. Amazon would like to continue to raise the level, raise the bar of what is creative on their ecosystem. Less low quality photoshopped crappy images, more super high res lifestyle photos with people that are real or not real. But as long as it gets across the idea, what you're trying to communicate with the creative.
Do you think Amazon will win out in the product photography AI for e-commerce? Or will it be like Canva or something like that?
Well, they announced a partnership with Canva, didn't they? So now you can actually go inside Canva and they have templates and suggested formats that you can then use to generate stuff or edit things. And then you push it over directly to your account. I believe it's even linked
I
at
didn't know that.
Sponsored ads level. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So they announced that some months ago, and I think only recently that's been like actually in action. So Canva is along for the ride. I don't think it's us versus them. It's more like
cool.
Canva's like, hey, we'll partner with Amazon. Heck yeah, this is great for us.
Yeah. Oh wow, that's wild. So that's really cool because I've played with many of them in 2024, and like it just doesn't feel like it's quite there yet. And I actually just in the last few weeks I saw someone do a huge comparison of like Canva, Amazon image generator, Midjourney, like what is best with producing products. And I'll be honest, like I asked that question about like, will it be this company or that company? And I feel like all of the examples that they posted were like pretty similar. Just like take product, put in certain setting. I feel like that's like ready to use as far as I'm concerned. And I feel like it got exponentially better just in Q4 2024. What I'm also really curious on is like, imagine you send a product, you send a 3D render of your product, and then like it puts it into a video. Like I'm seeing people with, it's AI generated, user generated content.
Yeah, I've seen this as well. This is so crazy.
AI generated, user generated content, meaning it's like a person sitting in a car, looking unassuming, shot with a cell phone. They're holding a product. They're talking about how good it is. And like the entire thing has been generated with AI. I actually feel like in 2024, in the tail end of 2024, user generated content has actually decreased in trustworthiness with consumers. And I was just reading something that employee generated content is actually on the rise. So like people who work at the company with the product talking about how it gets made, or like talking about their supply, like talking about how this product came to life, like talking about that stuff is actually on the rise versus some polished influencer.
Yeah, I think that Mike is definitely a trend I've seen. And when you say employee generated, you don't mean they're acting as what you call like online, like a sock puppet account. Like they're saying like, I'm a user and I love this product. They're saying, I'm the founder of X company and here's how the journey started. Yeah. Okay. So that's like really cool. And I respond to that. That's really interesting. I love that kind of stuff as a, fellow company founder. And like, I love to see how other people are doing it or thinking about it or their journey. That's very interesting.
Yeah. If you think about it, it's kind of like the next, as like AI happens, there's still a desire for authenticity. So it's like, you know what, influencers, too polished. It's like it looks too fake. And it's kind of true. Like you can go find anyone to say anything about whatever, but like, hey, this person actually like stands by they're actually standing up saying, this is who I am, this is how I came to think of this product, and like, this isn't a flash in the pan type thing. But yeah, that's a little bit of a tangent on the AI front, but
yeah, we could go on that for a while. But I have another theory, which I'll drop, and then we can move along. But I think there's going to be eventually, like we have organic food and it has like a label, it's like certified. There's going to be like made by humans, like 100% organic, no AI. And that's going to be some of the people that are doing, like content that's like, here's my business. Whereas these UGC videos I've seen that are like, here's my melatonin sleep pills or whatever. And then you say, here's the influencer, they're going to do this, this, and this. Those are almost totally indistinguishable from like real people. And what's crazy about that is that we, as people in this podcast, the people out there listening who are aware of this stuff, we're on the absolute cutting edge of this. Think about your uncles, think about your mom, your dad, your grandma. They're not going to have any kind of ability to distinguish like what is real and what is like generated by AI. Already, if you go on Facebook, which is a wasteland in its own way, you see all these AI generated slop, and it's like people all think it's real. We have to remember we're on the leading edge of this blade, right? Everyone else who's behind us is susceptible to these things. So keep that in mind.
Yeah, man. I think another interesting thing with AI is optimizing products for AI, in the sense of like people begin to interact with Amazon by typing in questions or prompts to Amazon Rufus or like the Amazon search bar. It's like, let me get gifts for my girlfriend. And then it will ask like, well, what is your girlfriend like? And you'll start answering those questions. It's like, what about these products? Like, nah, I'm thinking of something that can be more useful on the day to day, or like you'll be able to have conversations about what products to buy, which is really fascinating. And where I think it becomes really useful is like just good classic product page optimization. So like, I was using Rufus. I was like, I forget what I was asking it, but I was like in the market for an air filter. And I said something along the lines of like, give me an air filter that like is quiet, isn't too big or something like that. So like, I can't tell you how many products I know today, like don't fill out all of their product specifications. So like people leave the size of it blank. They leave the weight of it blank. They leave like a lot of those deeper descriptions blank. And like, I think describing your products and describing them well, not in a keyword general, because like I doubt many people might search like quiet air filter, but like that might be something that will come up in the middle of, I want an air filter. Imagine talking to an AI saying, I want an air filter that I can leave in my room when I'm like on calls, I can't hear it. So like then all of a sudden, like now it's valuable. So I think like optimizing for like AI search is going to be different than normal search, like keyword based search.
I love the idea. I love the idea because for years we've been focused on, let's call it SEO, like for web pages, and now we do Amazon SEO, which is what you just described. But what does SEO for AI look like? AIEO? I don't even know what it's called. It's starting to sound like vowels. Yeah, so it's like optimizing for AI specifically. And I think this is something that came up at Cross Border Summit. So I went to an event in Thailand just a few weeks ago, and someone on stage had a pretty good point, which is they posited Amazon thinks the future of search is actually voice in many cases, and they're making some pretty big bets on that. So what does it mean? It means that you pull up the Amazon app, you tap the Rufus thing, and you start talking to it. Okay, that's a usage model that I do right now with Perplexity and with ChatGPT and my own computer. Everyone's been trained on Siri and the Google Assistant, whatever that's called, for years. So I think it's like a reasonable bet. But what does that mean? That means the interaction model is very different. Amazon might recommend just one product instead of saying, here's the search and here's 30 products you look through. And you might be able to have a discussion. And so if you have more, rich metadata, whatever it's called, or Amazon's able to use tools like recognition, which we talked about in Cohort recently, is an image tool that, looks at an image and can derive context and meaning and keywords and things from an image without you actually putting those keywords in somewhere. The more rich information it will have to go off of. So yeah, what does optimizing for that look like is a real question for 2025, because I don't think any of these big companies are going to back off, because they've invested billions at this point in AI infrastructure, in the electricity to run it. Yeah, they're not going to be like, yeah, we tried Rufus, it didn't work. They're going to be like, no, Rufus is the future.
This is full speed ahead. Yeah, Google's like building their own mini nuclear power plants to power their AI. So yeah,
that's right.
To sort of conclude here, the resolution for the new year is just continue doing what we're doing, which is just like staying on top of it, using it, and really incorporating it into your workflow. And with that, let's jump to our third point. We just talked about the most bleeding, cutting edge thing. Let's take it back down to the old standard. Let's talk about sponsored ads, sponsored products, brands, sponsored display. Do you have any resolutions around them?
Yeah, I don't really have any resolutions, I guess. My intention is to make sure that we're staying on top of what I would consider the more machine learning, AI-driven optimization components. So many listeners of this podcast are Amazon ad nerds, or people that have familiarity with it, right? So you all know Performance Max, right? PMax in Google, right? So we're getting more things that are kind of similar to that.
Not many people do know what PMax is.
Oh, okay.
Break it down for him. Google Ads.
I've never actually used it myself. I've just seen it in action. So you're probably better to do it, being search scientist guy. So go ahead.
All right, I'll break it down real quick. So basically, inside Google Ads, there used to be, well, there still is, different campaign. You can run individual campaigns. I can run a YouTube campaign. I can run a search campaign. I can run a Google search shopping campaign. I can run Google display campaign, and I could optimize them individually. Or I can create a Performance Max campaign where I don't select any of those settings. Instead, I feed Google a lot of information. So I feed it like they call them assets. So like pictures of my product feed, maybe some audience signals of like things that I think would convert well or whatnot. And then Google just takes over. They're like, we'll decide where people see it first, second, third, fourth, fifth. We'll build your whole funnel for you. And it's just like Performance Max. That's what it is, Performance Max. Now there's still, in fact, we did an exercise at Search Scientist, and there's like 75 things to do to a PMax campaign to make it run better. Everything from product segmentation to asset optimization to like audience there's like still a bunch of stuff to do, but for the most part, theoretically, you could just press it and go.
Right, and I think that's their vision for average Joe advertiser that's not a Google Ads expert, but like has a plumbing business or something.
Yeah. No bid optimization. No, it's wild.
Give it your targets. And that's actually something we see in sponsored ads now. When I was setting up a campaign the other day, it asked me, hey, do you want to give us your cost per conversion, or your whatever it was, like cost per lead for a different display ad type. But basically you can start to enter targets. And then the idea is it's going to optimize towards those targets. And this is something that, okay, it's been around for Google for years. I get it. But for Amazon, it's still like fairly new. And I find pretty exciting. But at the same time, we as PPC people, we are control freaks in a lot of ways. So when we set something up like that, we're immediately suspicious of the platform. The joke for years, Mike, tell me if this is still true, is on Google, when you go and set up a campaign, the default settings are almost always the ones you don't want. You want to do like the opposite. Okay.
Every language, every country. And in fact, like Google has a sneaky setting, they still do actually, which is like pick your location. So it's like you type in United States, and then like underneath it is like a collapsed option, which is like, do you want to target just people in the United States or people who show interest in the United States? And then like showing interest in the United States is like searching a product that they could buy from a United States company. It's like
that's
bonkers.
Crazy. That's crazy. Okay, yeah. So you gotta watch out for these little gotchas. And Amazon has this in spades too. There's areas where you can see this. So when you go through, always be wary. Be aware of like what you can do in there. So there's that. But I also want to remain optimistic and say, let's try this. Let's test this. Let's give it the creative. Let's let it chew on it. Let's see if it can actually hit our CPMs or our cost per acquisition or our cost per detail page view, whatever the metrics it gives. They're changing and there's many of them. That's something I'm definitely tracking and aware of.
Yeah. I think for me, one intention I have for my sponsored products, brands, and display for 2025 is to, we're talking about a lot of like new stuff, like advanced stuff, like things like way out beyond in the deep end. And I think my intention for my 3 classic ad types is to really stick to the fundamentals, not like forget the fundamentals. So like being sure I'm still thinking of how these things operate and like being sure that I have really good systems and regimented systems to ensure that like everything I want to happen with my sponsored brands, sponsored products, sponsored display still happen like clockwork. So really like set the intention to be as efficient as possible with those ad types for sure.
So to make a sports analogy, it's kind of like for soccer, football, the passing, dribbling, scoring, like teamwork, the basics that everything else is built on top of. You can do a bicycle kick or like do an incredible corner, but like that's a rare thing. Instead, just work on your passing, work on your footwork, that kind of thing.
If I was a coach of a sports team, I would be that. I don't know who it is, but there's a story of like a NBA coach. He has everyone on the first day of practice for like 2 hours, like just tie their shoes. Cause he's like, you're never going to have shoes that come undone in a game. It's embarrassing. And so like, we're going to nail it. So like that kind of thing, that's what I would do if I were a sports coach.
Mike, what would be the PPC equivalent of having your shoes come untied during a big game?
Ooh, I mean, classic like search term management, being sure that your search terms, you are well aware of the composition of your search term data and ensuring that you have all the actions to catch the search terms that you don't like, search terms that you do like, being sure that you can manage those search terms perfectly and that you understand what the bids are and how they should behave.
Sounds good. I agree.
And without further ado, let's jump into maybe our last area for 2025, New Year's resolutions. Alrighty, Brent, do you have a final New Year's resolution for Amazon marketing in 2025?
Yeah, for me, this is jumping back into DSP, or as Amazon likes that we call it, ADSP, to distinguish it from other DSPs.
Right, because there's another DSP.
Well, DSP in general is a blanket term.
Right, there's like a delivery service provider. There's something else.
There is, yeah. If you Google around, and even if you ask like AIs, they get them confused. They'll start to talk about the other one. So you're like, no, I don't want to be a DSP driver. I want to drive DSP inside of Amazon advertising. So this got a lot of updates at Unbox, but it was on my radar like before that because we currently do DSP for, I don't know, like less than 10 clients at Pathfinder, but it's something that is, I think, the future. So like imagine this, you're Amazon, you have sponsored ads, and you're started to saturate a lot of advertising channels you have on first party marketplaces, right? I would argue that at some point last year or this year, we actually had more ads than we do now. I think Amazon's actually dialed that back a little bit because it was starting to harm user experience. And I think maybe they had some internal discussions. I have no proof for this, by the way. This is purely speculation. But what I've noticed, like from the advertising side and the management side, is I think that they have, maybe reduced the density of ads inside the marketplace. But if you look at their quarter 3 results, you can tell that area of the business for ads, at least, is like probably slowing. And so what's the future for Amazon? What are they investing in? They're investing in off Amazon, what they call non-endemic ADSP for physical product sellers who are on the marketplace, but also just general anybody who wants to use Amazon's first party data, their O&O inventory, and the platform that is DSP. So I've attended 3 conferences on this trip. I'm currently in Asia on a longer trip. And every single conference I've talked to, many of the people there in e-com, they know not a darn thing about Amazon DSP, and many of them are Amazon sellers who've never even heard of AMC, which we touched on at the top of the episode. So the awareness around these things is still really low, actually. It's this idea that you and me, we live in this bubble, we hear about DSP every week. But actually, the normal average Joe e-com seller or car company, insurance salesman, plumber, they've never heard of DSP. They've certainly heard of Meta. They probably advertise on Google. But the third biggest advertiser in the U.S. is Amazon. But there's a lot more room for growth there. So that is definitely an area of focus for me this next year.
And I think my final New Year's resolution, I'll be honest, I would love to launch my first, and I'm behind the ball on this, so other people have done it, but I would love to launch my first TikTok campaign. I would love to grab a product, to market it on TikTok in some way. So I don't know exactly how yet, but I really want that experience under my belt. So I haven't ran ads on TikTok before, but I think in 2025, I have an intention to learn a little bit about TikTok ads for e-com.
That's a great one. Would you be running it to Amazon, or would you be saying, hey, I'm going to do a TikTok shop. I'm going to set it up here, keep it within the ecosystem?
TikTok shop, keep it in the ecosystem for the purposes of I'm interested in listing a product on TikTok shop and, setting up my, a commission that an influencer can see so they can grab that product and they can create their own videos for their own audiences and push people to buy that product. I'm really fascinated by that idea. I know it's been around for what feels like forever, but I just haven't personally done it, and I would like to grab that experience.
Yeah, social commerce has arrived in the West, I think. It's like official, right? China has had these things for a very long time, and I guess it was up to a Chinese company to properly introduce it to the West. Because I think other companies have tried. Amazon has famously tried and failed probably 3 times with this kind of idea, right? But TikTok, that's really taken off. I was speaking with the owner of a TikTok agency 2 days ago, a friend of mine in the UK, and he was telling me, yeah, pretty much we have to change our processes every 4 to 5 months because the TikTok game changes, the algorithm changes, the incentives change, the pricing that we put out there has to change. So it's a very, very, very rapidly evolving space. And I don't personally think that TikTok is going to get banned or restricted in the US. There's also, talk about
Definitely
that.
Not, yeah. I would vote against it getting banned. I would have voted against it getting banned, meaning if I was betting, I'm talking about me on Polymarket. I would bet not banned in the US. And especially now I would put even more money on it, not getting banned in the US.
Yeah. So I think it's here to stay, for better or for worse, but it is a new channel. And do we have clients that are having success on there? Absolutely, we do. Our biggest and most savvy clients are in there mixing it up, and they're trying to figure out ways to make that work for them. And sometimes that means, not selling the same products you sell. Maybe you sell a slightly cheaper, more simple version of it, like a SKU that's just for TikTok. That's an idea that I see floated around a lot. It's different than your Amazon SKU. It's totally fine.
I'm blown away with how good the targeting is. I mentioned at the start of this episode, I was getting a new desk. I was really interested in a new desk for quite some time. For weeks, I was getting, to be honest, they were really cheap, low quality desks that I was seeing creators create content for. It's oh, I got a $70 stand-up desk. And I'm there's no way that's a good desk. But it was targeting me so well. And what impressed me the most were all the creators that thought of so many different ways to market this thing, which whoever the company was who had the desk in the first place, what a dream it is to have creators incentivized to be as creative as they could be to tap into the TikTok algorithm to create stuff that gets views and engagement, marketing their product. It people putting weights on the desk and increasing the height of the desk to show how durable it was, or just all these different creative ways that people were marketing somebody else's product. What a dream.
Yeah, think of all those minds churning on the problem, simultaneously. It's like having a massive creative department where everyone's not in one room, but they're in different places having different experiences and lives, and they come at it from different angles. If it was a desk, I know it would work for me. Just put a cat on there, and I'd be that's a desk I need. I need that cat desk. Problem solved.
Exactly. That's not part of my algorithm because honestly, cats are the worst pet you could possibly have.
You're a dog guy. You're a dog guy.
I'm a dog guy. I got a dog at my feet right now.
There you go.
Well, Brett, I thank you so much for coming back on the show again to do sort of 2025 New Year's resolutions. I think we're in store for a quite fortuitous 2025 if we can connect on a lot of these things. I think we'll just be sharper, better marketers if we can really connect on these things. So enjoy your time in Asia over there.
I'm having a good time. A lot of conferences, a wedding, team meetup, everything, mixing it up and mixing a little bit of cycling there too, of course, because that's my, I got to stay on brand on podcasts. So yeah, cycling as well.
What's cycling like in Japan?
It's outstandingly good. It's really, really nice. Road quality is amazing. Drivers are super courteous. Scenery is beautiful. It's like, I would give it like 10 out of 10. It's really nice.
Ooh. Well, that's really cool. How would you say, what about Barcelona? That's the only place I've ever cycled.
I have not ridden in Barcelona. That's one of my things for next year. Unrelated to Amazon ads. I'll be in Spain for some cycling, I think.
In the summer? I think I'm going to Portugal this summer.
I don't know about the summer. It's pretty hot in the summer.
It's brutal.
Maybe
it's brutal, actually. Well, Brent, thank you so much for coming on the show. Always an absolute pleasure. And I'll see you next week. Everyone else here on the PPC Den podcast.